Well, does President Obama's cool demeanor mask an amateur's incompetence? A new book chronicles Obama's steps and missteps in the Oval Office, as well as his behind-the-scenes clashes with liberal titans such as Bill and Hillary Clinton. Joining me now from New York City is Ed Klein to talk about his latest book, The Amateur, Barack Obama in the White House. Mr. Klein, thank you very much for joining us today.
My great pleasure.
Sir, one of the quotes that's getting a lot of attention is attributed to former President Bill Clinton. I'm going to read the quote out loud, and then perhaps you could talk about it. Quote, Obama doesn't know how to be president. He doesn't know how the world works. He's incompetent. Barack Obama is an amateur. Now, Mr. Klein, Bill Clinton denies he said this, but this book is getting a lot of traction because these criticisms of the president are coming from high-level liberals and Democrats. Did Bill Clinton really say this, and what do you think the mood is regarding Obama among the Democratic establishment?
Bill had a meeting in his private office in Chappaqua with Hillary and several of their friends in August of 2011, a year before the Democratic convention. And he urged Hillary at that meeting in front of everybody to run against Barack Obama in the primaries. Now, I know this because I interviewed two of the people who were in that room, and both of them said things that I checked with each other to make sure that I got the quotes correct. And Bill said he had done a secret and private poll showing that Hillary could beat Obama in the primaries, and she said to him, "What about loyalty? I'm his Secretary of State. I dine with him every Thursday at lunch. What about loyalty, Bill?" And he said, loyalty, there's no such word in politics. He also said, just as you've just repeated, that Barack Obama and the people around him don't know how the real world works, that Barack Obama is an amateur. And that's where the title of my book came from.
It seems to outside observers that Barack Obama has not engendered a great deal of personal loyalty. Many top Democratic leaders in Congress say he never returns their calls. They felt that they were left out on a limb with the push for Obamacare. Do you find that there's very little of the kind of personal loyalty that Bill Clinton, let's say, engendered, or people like John Kennedy or Lyndon Johnson engendered? Oh,
absolutely. There's this myth that the Republicans in Washington have blocked Barack Obama's legislative program. But I did a good deal of reporting in Washington, talking to both Democrats and Republicans, and you hear the same thing on both sides of the aisle. He never returns our calls. When we meet with him, he acts like he's the smartest guy in the room, and he doesn't want to hear anybody saying anything that contradicts what he believes. Other people have said to me, when you contradict him, he gives you the death stare. So this is a guy who's so arrogant, who feels he's such a messianic figure that he doesn't have to compromise with anybody. He doesn't have to sit down the way, say, Ronald Reagan sat down with Tip O'Neill at the end of the day, had a drink, told ribald stories, talked about their grandkids, and then got down to business. Barack Obama never does that.
Well, if politics is the art of the compromise, that sounds like an amateur to me. Let's shift gears for a moment, because you spoke at length with Reverend Jeremiah Wright. Now, he wasn't the kind of person that you thought he would be, was he?
Well, I expected, I suppose, to meet a person that I had seen on the videotapes, you know, the dashiki and with his face turned red, shouting and screaming and carrying on and denouncing everybody. He wasn't that way at all. He was a very calm, well put together guy. He was very courteous. I mean, he did say things that I didn't agree with, of course, during our 3-hour tape recorded meeting, but it wasn't the Jeremiah Wright that we've all seen on these videotapes.
You have fairly compelling evidence that Reverend Wright was offered a bribe to keep his distance from the Obama campaign prior to the election in 2008. Do you see any chance at all of an investigation or perhaps charges coming from the Eric Holder Justice Department?
Well, wouldn't that be interesting? I mean, here we have a minister of the church saying that he has an email from Barack Obama's closest friend, Eric Whitaker, the vice president of the University of Chicago Medical Center, and a guy who plays basketball with Obama, travels with him everywhere. goes on vacation with him, is really his closest pal. An email from Eric Whitaker in 2008 offering the Reverend Wright $150,000 if he would stay silent. Now, whether or not Barack Obama knew about this, we can't prove because I don't know for sure, so I don't say that he did, but it stretches credulity a little bit to think that Eric Whitaker did this all on his own.
Didn't Eric Whitaker just receive a fairly large grant, almost $6 million from the Obama administration for one of his projects?
Eric Whitaker holds the same job that Michelle Obama used to hold at the University of Chicago Medical Center, the Urban Health Initiative. That, and of course, the University of Chicago Medical Center had a chairman of the board whose name was, guess what, Valerie Jarrett. This is crony Chicago capitalism, one hand washing the other. And you're right, Eric Whitaker's Urban Health Initiative, which Michelle used to run, just got a $6 million grant from the government.
Maybe this would be a good time to ask you personally, sir, if you have evidence that somebody offered something damaging to the president, offered that person a bribe, and then when the president becomes elected, that person gets from the government a $6 million grant, I would have thought that most journalists would have thought that would be exactly the kind of thing that they might want to take a closer look at. It doesn't seem to be happening. What's your opinion of modern journalism?
Well, that's a good question because, my book, The Amateur, has gotten a lot of attention from conservative media, but it has gotten literally zero attention from the mainstream liberal media. And yet, can you imagine if George Bush, his friend, had offered somebody $150,000 to stay silent? It would be front page news. It would be all over the broadcast networks. I think it's
especially if
shameful
that person then got a $6 million grant as a result of that downstream.
That's right. That's right. So, this doesn't come as a surprise, but it still is more than disappointing. It's disgraceful that the media hasn't looked into this.
Final question for you today, sir. We've been told by the mainstream media that Barack Obama and Michelle Obama are a dream couple. They're madly in love with each other. They're just this idyllic sort of John and Jackie kind of White House couple. But your book points out some remarkable tensions and fractures in that relationship. Apparently, when Barack Obama lost an election, I believe it was in 2000, Michelle Obama actually had gone so far as to file divorce papers. Is that the image you think that is being projected? She prepared them. I beg your pardon. She prepared them.
She prepared divorce papers, and she told her girlfriends, whom I interviewed, whom she worked out at the gym with, that this marriage was very, very shaky and that she didn't know if it could continue. And Barack Obama told people the same thing, that his wife was very, very angry with him and he was afraid she was going to leave him. Now, that was in 2000. We're now in 2012. I don't think the marriage is shaky today. I think they're, now that he's won the presidency, they're living in the White House. I think they consider themselves to be a political team. She's not the happy housewife simply, taking care of Sasha and Malia and promoting anti-obesity. She's really his most important political advisor, the person who is even further to the left than he is and who pushes programs that she feels he was elected to enact. Things that would make him a transformative president, engineering social equality. I think that both of them believe deeply in that theology, if you will, political theology.
Well, just a final question for you today, sir. Those of us who listen to Barack Obama talking about Michelle have often noticed that he says things like, Michelle only lets me watch an hour of ESPN, or if there's a to-do list, Michelle gives me a to-do list and I just check the things off. She seems to be very protective, certainly, of him and very much almost controlling the agenda. Can you very briefly touch upon the souring of the relationship between Michelle Obama and Oprah Winfrey, who basically launched Barack Obama into the national scene in early 2008?
I think Oprah Winfrey can take credit for helping Barack Obama win the primary against Hillary Clinton. And I think Barack Obama would admit to that. She also was instrumental in helping him get elected president. And afterward, she expected to play a key role in the administration. But both Michelle Obama and her best friend, Valerie Jarrett, who is the chief advisor to both Michelle and Barack, felt that if they allowed Oprah in, she would become the substitute first lady and overshadow Michelle Obama and perhaps influence Obama in a direction that they didn't want him to go. So they froze her out. And when she offered to help Michelle with her anti-obesity campaign, Michelle said, no, I don't, she said to one of her aides, I don't want a very wealthy, fat lady being the emblem of my program. When Oprah heard about that, she was extremely upset and hurt. And she decided, as we all know now, that she is not going to campaign in 2012 for Barack Obama.
Well, sir, just to conclude, your entire book seems to be just a running narrative of a man and a couple who are, if nothing else, filled with a remarkable lack of gratitude for the people that got them there. Do you think that that lack of gratitude and that weakness of those personal political bonds is going to cost him in November of 2012?
I think we see now there's a lack of enthusiasm on the part of his base. A lot of people are going to still vote for him who voted last time around, but a lot of people may stay home because they don't feel that he's fulfilled the promise that they had invested in him. So I think, yes, that there's a tremendous disillusionment on the left, and he's going to have a lot of trouble getting out the vote. I'm not saying he's not going to win. I don't know who's going to win the election. Nobody can predict that, of course. But I am saying that he's in a lot more trouble than it now appears.
Well, Mr. Klein, it is a remarkable book, and it's certainly making a big splash. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today about it.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Well, that was best-selling author and Vanity Fair contributing writer Ed Klein. His latest book, The Amateur, Barack Obama in the White House, is in stores now, or just pick up a copy on Amazon. You can also find him online by visiting edwardklein.com. For PJTV, I'm Bill Whittle. Thanks for watching.